Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 3 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto. And we're right at the beginning of the first section of chapter 2. Second chapter is titled Daksha Curses Lord Shiva. And we are going into the first section. We read the verses yesterday. First section is from verse 1 to verse 3. Vidura asks Maitreya why Daksha was envious of Sati. Right, so let's get into it, but first of all, our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Niravishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chade Chatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha, Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right, okay. So, chapter 2, 4th canto, chapter 2. Daksha curses Lord Shiva, first section. Vidura asks Maitreya why Daksha was envious of Sati, verse 1 to verse 3. Okay, so we read the verses already, the translations, so we'll go into the whole thing in more detail now. Verse 1, Vidura inquired, why was Daksha, who was so affectionate towards his daughter, envious of Lord Shiva, who is the best among the gentle? Why did he neglect his daughter Sati? Okay, so let's have a look at the purport here. It's not a big purport, but it's there. So, right. So Prabhupada makes the point at the beginning of the purport here of this verse 1, that here in the second chapter, the cause of the dissension between Shiva and Daksha is explained. It was due to a great sacrifice arranged by Daksha for Prabhupada says, the pacification of the entire universe. And Lord Shiva, he's the best of the gentle. He's not envious of anyone. He's equal to all. He has all good qualities. And even Shiva means all auspicious. So how could Lord Shiva have an enemy? It's hardly possible. Yes. But somehow or other, it happened that Daksha became extremely envious. Oh, Krishna. Anyway, we'll see as we go through the following verses. Daksha gets so carried away. Yes. Now, Lord Shiva, he's such a renounced person, so peaceful, so materially unattached. He doesn't even have a house, he just lives under a tree. And Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva symbolizes, his personality symbolizes the best of gentleness. So, and Daksha had already given his daughter to Lord Shiva. So how on earth could he become inimical towards Lord Shiva so intensely that Sati, his kind of like his pet little daughter, would become so incredibly distressed, she would give up her body? Good question, and let's go into it. So, okay, verse 2. Lord Shiva, the spiritual master of the entire world, is free from enmity, is a peaceful personality, and is always satisfied in himself. He's the greatest among the demigods. How is it possible that Daksha could be inimical towards such an auspicious personality? So Srila Prabhupada begins the purport by saying that Lord Shiva is described in this verse as Charachara Guru, the spiritual master of all animate and inanimate objects. Sometimes he's known as Bhutanath, which means the worshipable deity of the dull-headed. This term Bhuta is sometimes taken to mean ghosts. But the thing is, Lord Shiva, he's so wonderful, so auspicious and so merciful. He reforms the ghosts and demons and many others who are ungodly. So therefore he's the spiritual master of everyone, from the dull and demoniac up to the highly learned Vaishnavas. He has his own sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya. And he's famous, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhuas, the greatest Vaishnav. Even if he's sometimes angry, such a person cannot be the object of envy as such. So therefore Vidura is astonished, and it's Vidura who's asking these questions here, speaking these verses. Vidura is amazed. How could it be like that? Daksha's a great person, he's a Prajapati, and all his daughters are highly elevated. And even amongst chaste women, his daughter Sati is the first. Sati means the most chaste. So yeah, Vidura's astonished, he's amazed. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, how then could there possibly so much enmity between them, that Sati, the most chaste goddess, could give up her body because of their quarrel? Right, okay, so verse 3, the last verse in this section, and there's no purport. Vidura asks, my dear Maitreya, to part with one's life is very difficult. Would you kindly explain to me how such a son-in-law and father-in-law could quarrel so bitterly that the great goddess Sati could give up her life? Okay, so next section, second section, from verse 4 to verse 7, Daksha enters the sacrificial arena. Let me read the verse 4. The sage Maitreya said, in a former time, the leaders of the universal creation performed a great sacrifice in which all the great sages, philosophers, demigods, and fire gods assembled with their followers. So here we have now, on Vidura's request, Maitreya is beginning his explanation of what caused this misunderstanding between Shiva and Daksha, which led to Sati giving up her body. So, okay, there was a big sacrifice. And the leaders of the universe, even people like Prabhupada says, Marichi, Daksha was a leader of the universe, and Vasishta. So they all arranged for this great sacrifice, for which demigods like Indra and the fire gods came. They came with their followers. And Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva were also there. So now we'll read verses 5, 6, and 7, where there are no purports. Verse 5, when Daksha, the leader of the Prajapatis, entered that assembly, his personal bodily luster as bright as the effulgence of the sun, the entire assembly was illuminated, and all the assembled personalities became insignificant in his presence. Verse 6, influenced by his personal bodily luster, all the fire gods and other participants in that great assembly, with the exceptions of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, gave up their own sitting places and stood in respect for Daksha. And verse 7, Daksha was adequately welcomed by the president of the great assembly, Lord Brahma. After offering Lord Brahma respect, Daksha, by the order of Brahma, properly took his seat. Okay, so that's the basic situation there, that everyone has greeted Daksha, it's his yajna, it's his sacrifice at his place. So he's the leader of the program. So yeah, everyone stood up to greet him and to offer respect. Everyone except Lord Brahma, who is his senior, and Lord Shiva, who, even though he's his son-in-law, he's also his senior, being a guna avatar. Yeah. Right, so third section, from verse 8 to verse 19, Daksha curses Lord Shiva. So I am going to now read through the verses. So the verses, verse 8. Before taking his seat, however, Daksha was very much offended to see Lord Shiva sitting and not showing him any respect. At that time Daksha became greatly angry, and his eyes glowing, he began to speak very strongly against Lord Shiva. Verse 9. All sages, Brahmins, and fire gods present, please hear me with attention, for I speak about the manners of gentle persons. I do not speak out of ignorance or envy. Verse 10. Shiva has spoiled the name and fame of the governors of the universe and has polluted the path of gentle manners. Because he is shameless, he does not know how to act. Verse 11. He's already accepted himself as my subordinate by marrying my daughter in the presence of fire and Brahmins. He has married my daughter, who is equal to Gayatri, and has pretended to be just like an honest person. Verse 12. He has eyes like a monkey's, yet he has married my daughter, whose eyes are just like those of a deer cub. Nevertheless, he did not stand up to receive me, nor did he think it fit to welcome me with sweet words. Verse 13. I had no desire to give my daughter to this person who has broken all rules of civility. Because of not observing the required rules and regulations, he is impure. But I was obliged to hand over my daughter to him, just as one teaches the messages of the Vedas to a Sudra. Verses 14 and 15. He lives in filthy places like crematoriums, and his companions are the ghosts and demons, naked like a madman, sometimes laughing and sometimes crying. He smears crematorium ashes all over his body. He does not bathe regularly, and he ornaments his body with a garland of skulls and bones. Therefore only in name is he Shiva, or auspicious. Actually, he is the most mad and inauspicious creature. Thus he is very dear to crazy beings in the gross mode of ignorance, and he is their leader. Verse 16, on the request of Lord Brahma, I handed over my chaste daughter to him, although he is devoid of all cleanliness, and his heart is filled with nasty things. Verse 17, the sage Maitreya continued, thus Daksha, seeing Lord Shiva sitting as if against him, washed his hands and mouth and cursed him in the following words. Verse 18, the demigods are eligible to share in the oblations of sacrifice, but Lord Shiva, who is the lowest of all the demigods, should not have a share. Verse 19, Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial assembly, Daksha in great anger cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. So, devotees, now we will go back and read the verses again, but with their purports. So, the section is Daksha curses Lord Shiva. Now verse 8. Before taking his seat, however, Daksha was very much offended to see Lord Shiva sitting and not showing him any respect. At that time Daksha became greatly angry, and his eyes glowing, he began to speak very strongly against Lord Shiva. Yes, so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada makes some few comments. So, according to like typical Vedic etiquette, as the son-in-law, Lord Shiva was expected to stand for his father-in-law, Daksha. But he is not just your ordinary son-in-law. Rather, he and Brahma are the principal demigods in the whole universe, and their positions were higher than Daksha's. So really, Daksha has no right to expect Shiva to stand up for him because he's his son-in-law. But anyway, Daksha, having basically lost his senses, he couldn't tolerate that, and he took it as an insult from his son-in-law. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, previously also, he was not very much satisfied with Lord Shiva, for Shiva looked very poor and was niggardly in dress. Verse 9. So this is now Daksha expressing his anger that Lord Shiva didn't stand up for him. All sages, Brahmins, and fire gods present, please hear me with attention, for I speak about the manners of gentle persons. I do not speak out of ignorance or envy. Well, this is a very interesting point, that the very first thing that Daksha says is that, don't think that I'm angry. Don't think that I'm doing something wrong. I'm actually doing something right, because I'm speaking about the manners of gentle persons. So I'm doing a good thing. I'm not speaking out of ignorance or envy. The unfortunate fact is that he is speaking out of ignorance and envy, but he's sort of, what would you say, trying to brainwash the people to think that, oh, it's okay. So Srila Prabhupada, there's a purport here. Prabhupada says that Daksha's trying to be tactful. That's what he's trying to be diplomatic. That, who, me? Get angry? Of course not. I'd never get angry. Envious? Me? Never. No chance. I just want to talk about the manners of gentle people. Prabhupada makes the point that he's trying to pacify the audience. Prabhupada says, although naturally this might affect some unmannerly upstarts, and the assembly might be unhappy because they did not want even unmannerly persons to be offended. In other words, some people who are not of good character might be disturbed by the criticism of Lord Shiva. But it's not really criticism. It's not enviousness. So some people who don't understand, they might become unhappy. Yeah. But rather because Daksha is so knowledgeable, therefore he's speaking against Lord Shiva, so it's a good thing. Right. So actually from the beginning, Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva, although he didn't understand that he was envious. He didn't understand that he was being envious. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, although he spoke like a man in ignorance, he wanted to cover his statements by saying that he was not speaking for impudent or envious reasons. Yeah. It's just trying to be tactful, as Prabhupada says, diplomatic, polite. Politics means the art of being polite. And, sometimes we see amongst big politicians, two big politicians meet together, and we know they hate each other. They hate each other. Like if it was America, Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, they meet together. But many times when they meet together in a public situation, it's big smiles, shaking hands. Oh yes, how nice to see you. But actually we must know they hate each other. Yeah. Okay, so verse 10. Shiva, this is again Daksha, criticizing Shiva. Shiva has spoiled the name and fame of the governors of the universe and has polluted the path of gentle manners. Because he is shameless, he does not know how to act. Really? So, Prabhupada says that Daksha wanted to tell the people there, who are all demigods, that Lord Shiva has ruined the good name of you demigods by his bad behavior. In due course, after a few verses, he'll talk about what he feels is the bad behavior of Lord Shiva. So Srila Prabhupada raises a very interesting point, that even though he's trying to criticize Lord Shiva, it is possible to interpret his words in a good sense, that he's saying something nice. So he stated that, it's in the verse, Shiva is Yashogna, one who spoils name and fame. But it can mean he's so famous that his fame has killed all other fame. Yeah. Even those who are otherwise very famous. But when people see his fame, those people who think they're famous, they'll feel that I'm not famous at all. And all the people will think, this person is not famous. because Lord Shiva is so famous. So then Daksha, again, he uses the word Nirapatrapa, one who is stunted. And stunted, I mean, that's a bit of a funny word. Stunted in terms of a person means a person like a hunchback, if you know what I mean, a deformed body. That person is stunted, Nirapatrapa. But it can mean one who is the maintainer of those who have no shelter. Yes. So actually, it can be very, very nice. The great mercy of the advanced devotee. Right, so Prabhupada points out, generally Lord Shiva is known as the Lord of the Bhutas, the lower grade living entities. And because he's very kind, they take shelter of him. And he's easily satisfied by them. So he's called Ashutosh. Ashutosh means one who's easily satisfied. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, to such men who cannot approach other demigods or Vishnu, Lord Shiva gives shelter. Therefore the word Nirapatrapa can be used in that sense, because Lord Shiva gives shelter to the ghosts and lower grade living entities. Therefore he can be called Nirapatrapa, one who gives shelter to those people who other demigods will not give shelter. Okay, so verse 11. He has already, this is again Daksha, he has already accepted himself as my subordinate by marrying my daughter in the presence of fire and Brahmins. He has married my daughter who is equal to Gayatri and has pretended to be just like an ordinary person. So it's very short purport, just one sentence. Let me read it. Daksha's statement that Lord Shiva pretended to be an honest person means that Shiva was dishonest, because in spite of accepting the position of Daksha's son-in-law, he was not respectful to Daksha. Now verse 12, which has no purport, and just listen, oh Krishna, this is so offensive. Daksha says, he means Lord Shiva. He has eyes just like a monkey's, yet he has married my daughter, whose eyes are just like those of a deer cub. Nevertheless, he did not stand up to receive me, nor did he think it fit to welcome me with sweet words. Well, the thing is, Lord Shiva didn't stand up because he's senior to Daksha. He's senior to Daksha. And he didn't welcome him with sweet words because he's senior. 13. I had no desire to give my daughter to this person who has broken all rules of civility. Because of not observing the required rules and regulations, he is impure. But I was obliged to hand over my daughter to him, just as one teaches the messages of the Vedas to a Sudra. So Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, a Sudra is forbidden to take lessons from the Vedas, because a Sudra, due to his unclean habits, is not worthy to hear such instructions. And Prabhupada says this is like the restriction which is there in some universes, not actually all, that you cannot enter the law college unless you have already some lower degree. That's normally how it works, not always. If you want to get a law degree, you go to university. First of all, you get just a regular BA, a Bachelor of Arts. then you can start studying law. So, yeah, according to Daksha, Lord Shiva's unclean, in habits, not worthy to have the hand of Sati. And Sati is very enlightened, beautiful, and chaste. Well, that's true. Sati is very special. So Daksha uses the term Bina Setave, the word Bina Setave, which refers to one who has broken all regulations for good behavior by not following Vedic principles. He's saying this is Lord Shiva. Amazingly offensive. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in other words, according to Daksha, the entire transaction of the marriage to his daughter with Shiva was not in order. Verses 14 and 15. He lives in filthy places like crematoriums, and his companions are the ghosts and demons, naked like a madman, sometimes laughing and sometimes crying. He smears crematorian ashes all over his body. He does not bathe regularly, and he ornaments his body with a garland of skulls and bones. Therefore, only in name is he Shiva, or auspicious. Actually, he's the most mad and inauspicious creature. Thus, he is very dear to crazy beings in the gross mode of ignorance, and he is their leader. Prabhupada makes an important point about bathing. Those who don't regularly bathe are supposed to be in association with ghosts and crazy creatures, hobgoblins. In South Africa, tikalosh. So, Lord Shiva, of course, he appears like that. Snake around the neck and ashes of cremated human bodies on his body. And like that. But actually he's not. His name Shiva is fitting. He's very kind to those who are in Tamagun. Yeah. Such as the unclean drunkards who never bathe. So Lord Shiva is so kind, he's so merciful. He gives them shelter and gradually brings them to spiritual consciousness. And despite its being very difficult to do all of this, because it's not like they're volunteering. We want to chant Hare Krishna, we want to become devotees. But they're kind of the opposite, really. Yeah. So he's very kind, he gives them shelter. Shelter to the shelterless. To those who just cannot get shelter. And he brings them to Krishna consciousness. So then, despite it being so difficult to do like that, he takes charge of them. Therefore, he's described in Vedic literatures as being all auspicious. So Prabhupada makes the point here that sometimes great people meet fallen souls, not for personal interest, but to benefit them. And of course, in the material world, there are all sorts of living entities, some in goodness, some in passion, some in ignorance. Lord Vishnu takes charge of the advanced devotees. Brahma takes charge of the materialistic. But Shiva is so kind. He takes charge of the people who are in gross ignorance, whose behavior is lower than animals. Therefore, he's called especially auspicious. Verse 16. On the request, so again it's Daksha, lamenting and criticizing. On the request of Lord Brahma, I handed over my chaste daughter to him, although he is devoid of all cleanliness and his heart is filled with nasty things. So let's have a look at the purport here. So yeah, it is one of the main duties of parents, at least in the longer run, to hand their daughters over to suitable people as befitting their family standing in a general sense, the type of family that they have, as befitting their family standing in cleanliness, gentle behavior, wealth, social position, etc. So Daksha is repentant, he's regretting that on the request of his father, Brahma, he gave his daughter to someone who, according to him, was nasty. He was so angry, he didn't mention the request was from his father. In other words, what he's saying is that it's not my mistake, it was Lord Brahma's mistake. He's the one who said she must marry him. I didn't want it because I know better, but he insisted, he's my father. There you go. So instead of referring to his Lord Brahma as his father, he referred to Brahma as Parameshti, the supreme teacher in the universe. Yeah. So there he is, he's accusing his father, Lord Brahma, of being less intelligent. So the point is, in anger one forgets everything. So Daksha not only accused Shiva, but criticized his own father for giving bad advice. Verse 17, the sage Maitreya continued, thus Daksha, seeing Lord Shiva sitting as if against him, washed his hands and mouth and cursed him in the following words. Whatever you do, devotees, don't curse people. So there's no purport there to verse 17. Let's have a look at verse 18. So this is now Daksha again speaking. The demigods are eligible to share in the oblations of sacrifice, but Lord Shiva, who is the lowest of all the demigods, should not have a share. So he's trying to cut him out of the yajna, which unfortunately is completely ridiculous. So Prabhupada begins, because of this curse, Shiva was deprived of his share in the oblations of Vedic sacrifices. It was all due to the curse of Daksha. But Srila Prabhupada does a really amazing thing. He refers to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who says that actually it was auspicious, it was better that he got deprived of his share of Vedic sacrifices. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says Shiva was saved from the calamity of taking part with other demigods who are materialistic. Shiva is such a great devotee, so it's not fitting for him to wait or sit with such materialistic people. So the curse was indirectly a blessing. And Prabhupada gives a very interesting and important example. Practical example of Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who used to sit in a latrine to chant Hare Krishna, means to sit in a toilet. So actually Lord Shiva is a great devotee. It's not fitting for him to sit with materialistic people like the general demigods, so the curse is indirectly a blessing. Yeah, with Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj, materialistic people would come to see him and bother him while he chanted. So he would sit in a filthy place like in a toilet, just so people wouldn't bother him. There's one story, one very pious family from Navadweep. They owned a dharamshala, like a pilgrim's hotel, you could say. And they invited Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, please come and stay, live in our dharamshala. We will fix up a room, everything will be nice for you, and you can chant there. So Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj told them that, I will only come if you let me sit in the toilet. And they said, the family said, no, we can't do that, that's terrible. And Gaurkishore said, it's the only place where I won't be bothered by materialistic people. So either you let me stay in the toilet or you just leave me alone. Yes, so he would sit sometimes in filthy places where people wouldn't go because of the smell and the filth. But at the same time, he was such a great person, such a great devotee, that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, himself the greatest devotee of his time, accepted him as spiritual master. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the conclusion is that Lord Shiva behaved in his own way to avoid materialistic persons who might disturb him in his prosecution of Krishna consciousness. Verse 19, Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial assembly, Daksha in great anger cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. Okay, so Prabhupada explains, it's a very important point. Anger is so detrimental that even great personalities like Daksha, that even Daksha out of anger left the arena where Lord Brahma was presiding and all the other saintly people were there. And they all asked him not to go, but in anger he went, thinking that auspicious place not good enough for him, not good enough. So he was puffed up by his exalted position. He thought no one was greater than him in argument. So Lord Brahma, it seems that everyone, including Lord Brahma, tried to stop Daksha from leaving, but he wouldn't stop. The place is not good enough for him. He thought that no one is greater than him in argument. So it seems even Lord Brahma tried to stop him, but Daksha still left. And Prabhupada says, that is the effect of cruel anger. So Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse 62 and 63. And Prabhupada says we must avoid three things: lust, anger, and the mode of passion, because they make a person crazy, even if he's a great person like Daksha. And of course the name Daksha means expert. The name Daksha suggests he was expert in material activities, but still, because of his aversion to a great person like Shiva, he was attacked by these three things: lust, anger, and the mode of passion. So Lord Chaitanya, of course, was very careful. He taught that we must be careful, we must not offend Vaishnavas. These offenses against Vaishnavas, they're compared to mad elephants. I'll just destroy your Krishna consciousness just like that. Lord Chaitanya compared offenses towards a Vaishnav to a mad elephant. As a mad elephant can do anything horrible, so when a person offends a Vaishnav, he can perform any abominable action. Okay, so section 4, verse 20 to 26, Nandishvara curses the followers of Daksha. Let's read the verses. Verse 20, upon understanding that Lord Shiva had been cursed, Nandishvara, one of Lord Shiva's principal associates, became greatly angry. His eyes became red and he prepared to curse Daksha and all the Brahmins present there, who had tolerated Daksha's cursing Shiva in harsh words. 21. So he said, this is now Nandishvara's curse, anyone who has accepted Daksha as the most important personality and neglected Lord Shiva because of envy is less intelligent, and because of visualizing in duality will be bereft of transcendental knowledge. Verse 22. Pretentiously religious householder life, in which one is attracted to material happiness, and thus also attracted to the superficial explanation of the Vedas, so that pretentiously religious household life robs one of all intelligence and attaches one to fruitive activities as all in all. 23. Daksha has accepted the body as all in all. Therefore, since he's forgotten the Vishnupada or Vishnu Gati and is attached to sex life only, within a short time he'll have the face of a goat. Prophetic words. That's what's going to happen after a little while. Verse 24. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. 25. May those who are envious of Lord Shiva, being attracted by the flowery language of the enchanting Vedic promises, and who have thus become dull, always remain attached to fruitive activities. 26. These Brahmins take to education, austerity, and vows only for the purpose of maintaining the body. They shall be devoid of discrimination between what to eat and what not to eat. They will acquire money, begging from door to door, simply for the satisfaction of the body. Okay, so now we go back to read the verses and the purports. Upon understanding that Lord Shiva had been cursed, Nandishvara, one of Lord Shiva's principal associates, became greatly angry. His eyes became red, and he prepared to curse Daksha and all the Brahmins present there, who had tolerated Daksha's cursing Shiva in harsh words. So, okay, let's have a look at the purport. Prabhupada begins by making the point that there's been long-standing dissension among some neophyte Vaishnavas and Shivites. Prabhupada says that they're always at loggerheads. I mean, it happens, and particularly before. Yeah. So when Daksha cursed Lord Shiva with harsh words, some of the Brahmins, they might have enjoyed it, the cursing, as some of them didn't appreciate Lord Shiva. And this is due to their ignorance of his position. Lord Shiva, Prabhupada says, he could have cursed Daksha, a counter curse, but because of his great personal nature, he was silent and tolerant. But Nandishvara, one of Shiva's principal associates, he wasn't like that. So as a follower, it was the right thing to do for Nandishvara not to tolerate. But he shouldn't have cursed the Brahmins who were present there. That the situation was so complex that those who were not strong enough forgot their positions and started cursing and counter-cursing in the great assembly. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in other words, the material field is so unsteady that even personalities like Nandishvara, Daksha, and many of the Brahmins present were infected by the atmosphere of envy. Verse 21, anyone who's accepted Daksha as the most important personality and neglected Lord Shiva because of envy is less intelligent and, because of visualizing in duality, will be bereft of transcendental knowledge. So this is Nandishvara's first curse. Anyone supporting Daksha was a fool, identifying with the body. So therefore Daksha had no transcendental knowledge, and supporting him would deprive one of transcendental knowledge. Nandishvara said that Daksha identified with the body like other materialists and was trying to derive facilities in relationship with the body. And Daksha's excessively attached to the body, wife, children, home, etc. These are all different from the soul. So therefore, Nandishvara's curse is saying that anyone who supports Daksha would be bereft of transcendental knowledge of soul and of the Lord. Verse 22, pretentiously religious householder life, in which one is attracted to material happiness and thus also attracted to the superficial explanation of the Vedas, robs one of all intelligence and attaches one to fruitive activities as all in all. So again, this is Nandishvara. And he's saying that people who are in bodily consciousness, they're attached to the fruitive activities of the Vedic literature. And Prabhupada, as an example, says, if we follow Chaturmasya vow, then we'll get happiness in heaven, in the heavenly planets, not eternal. But Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Bhagavad Gita says this flowery language mainly attracts people who are in bodily consciousness. And for them, heavenly pleasure is everything. They don't know that beyond this is the spiritual kingdom. They don't know how to get there, to the spiritual kingdom. So therefore, they're bereft of transcendental knowledge. They may carefully observe the rules of householder life to go to the moon or different heavenly planets. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, it is stated here that such persons are attached to Gramya Sukha, which means material happiness, without knowledge of eternal, blissful spiritual life. So Nandishvara continues, Daksha has accepted the body as all in all. Therefore, since he has forgotten the Vishnupad or Vishnugati and is attached to sex life only, Within a short time you'll have the face of a goat. Verse 24. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nesciently involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Right, there's a short purport here. Srila Prabhupada says, first of all, the three curses mentioned here are sufficient to make one as dull as stone, void of spiritual knowledge, and preoccupied with material education, which is nescience. So after uttering these curses, Nandishvara cursed the Brahmins to continue in the cycle of birth and death because of supporting Daksha in blaspheming Shiva. In verse 25, may those who are envious of Lord Shiva, being attracted by the flowery language of the enchanting Vedic promises, and who have thus become dull, always remain attached to fruitive activities. And there's very short purport here. Let me just read it. The Vedic promises of elevation to higher planets for a better standard of materialistic life are compared to flowery language, because in a flower there's certainly an aroma, but that aroma does not last for a very long time. In a flower there's honey, but that honey is not eternal. So I'm going to carry on and read the last verse, 26, in this section. These Brahmins, Nandishvara again, against the Brahmins, these Brahmins take to education, austerity, and vows only for the purpose of maintaining the body. They shall be devoid of discrimination between what to eat and what not to eat. They will acquire money begging from door to door simply for the satisfaction of the body. So this is the third curse of Nandishvara, and it's completely functional in Kali Yuga. The Brahmins are just like that, no longer interested in understanding Brahman, just simply trying to make money by doing yagyas or just begging or whatever. So to be a Brahmin is not a hereditary title. The duties of a Brahmin are discussed in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And if someone from a non-Brahmin family wants to become a Brahmin by becoming qualified under a spiritual master, these so-called Brahmins object. So through being cursed by Nandishvara, they have no discrimination between eatables and non-eatables. They just live for the body and family. And they're not worthy of being called Brahmins. But in Kali Yuga, they claim to be Brahmins. And if someone tries to become Brahminical in qualification, they try to stop him. So Lord Chaitanya condemned this strongly. And he told, when talking with Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya said that Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kene Noi Ye Krishna Tattva Veta Se Guru Hoy. Whatever you are, Brahmin, Sudra, householder, sannyasi, if you know the science of Krishna, you're a guru. And Lord Chaitanya had many so-called Sudra disciples, Haridas Thakur, Ramananda Roy. Even the 6 Goswamis were, even though they're born Brahmins and they're extremely Brahminical, but still because of association with Muslims, they were ostracized from the Brahminical community. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.